Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I came home dreaming of a cold beer and a quiet night until I found strangers partying in my backyard pool. At the center, my smug new neighbor, claiming she owned it. I'm a property lawyer. I know fraud when I see it. She picked the wrong yard to invade. By the time I pulled into the driveway that Friday evening, all I could think about was a beer, a shower, and maybe kicking back by the pool with my kids before bedtime. My week had been a hurricane of depositions, land dispute cases, and one particularly dense landowner who thought right-of-way meant I go where I please. But nothing, and I mean nothing in my professional life, could have prepared me for what I saw. When I walked into my own backyard, there were voices, music, clinking glasses, not the distant kind that comes from the neighbor's barbecue. This was up close, inside my damn property. I stepped through the gate and froze. My pool, my private pool that I built brick by brick 6 years ago, was now hosting what looked like a wine mom sorority party. 5 or 6 women lounged around like they'd rented a spa resort. Towels were laid out neatly across my chairs. A Bluetooth speaker was propped up on the diving board, streaming some kind of bossa nova remix. A bottle of Chardonnay sat chilling in a floating tray in the middle of the water. And there, chest deep in my pool, was a woman I recognized only from the smug face that had recently appeared across the street. Karen. Last name, Stockton. New neighbor. Head of the HOA I don't belong to. Power-walking menace. Apparently now a full-time pool pirate. She spotted me and didn't even blink. In fact, she smiled like I was the trespasser. "Oh, you must be Jared," she said, like I was an Airbnb host checking on my guests. She stepped out of the water slowly, deliberately, like a damn Bond villain in Capri Bottoms. "I was wondering when you'd show up. We need to have a little chat about property lines." I didn't say anything at first. My brain stalled somewhere between, "Is this real?" and "How many felonies is this?" Karen dried her hands with one of my own monogram towels before walking toward me, unfazed. "I assume you haven't seen the updated deed transfer." That snapped me out of it. "What the hell are you talking about? This is my house. This is my pool. You're trespassing." She didn't flinch. "Not according to the county recorder's office. This section of the lot, including the pool area, was recently reallocated under a boundary adjustment. It's now part of my parcel." I laughed. Not out of humor, more like survival reflex. "Lady, I'm a property law expert. I'd know if someone moved my pool." She crossed her arms, still wet from the water. "Well, clearly you missed the memo. And right now, you're technically standing on my property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I took a step forward. "You're insane." And that's when she pulled out her phone and dialed 911 right in front of me. "Yes, hello," she said, in full performance mode. "There's a strange man on my property. He's threatening me and my friends, and he refuses to leave. Yes, he looks angry. I'm scared for our safety." I looked around at her terrified friends, one of whom had just popped open a second bottle of wine. Within 10 minutes, I had 2 sheriff's deputies at my front gate. My wife, Amber, had come out during the commotion, and our kids were peeking nervously from the patio door. I tried to remain calm as the officers approached. Karen met them first, of course, flanked by her towel brigade. "That man right there," she said, pointing at me like I was the guy from America's Most Wanted, just showed up and started yelling. "He tried to force us off our property. I have documentation. It's all legal." One officer turned to me. "Sir, can we see some ID? Just need to get a sense of what's going on." I handed over my license, still baffled. "This is my house. My name's Jared Weston. I've owned this property for over 6 years. This pool was part of the original build-out," Karen interjected. "I have the parcel documents right here," she said, waving some printed pages. "The updated map from the county shows the property line was adjusted last month. I was told everything's in order." One of the deputies took her papers and looked them over. He frowned slightly, then looked at the other officer. "According to this, the pool area is under her parcel number." Amber stepped in, clearly furious. "This is our home. You can't just take part of someone's property because you printed out a map." The deputy raised a hand. "Ma'am, we're not saying anyone's right or wrong yet. This may be a clerical issue, but until it's cleared up, we'd prefer everyone remain on their designated side to avoid escalation." Karen smiled like a python that just swallowed a family pet. I stared at the officer. "You're seriously asking me to walk away from my backyard while these people use my pool like it's a damn community resort?" The deputy was clearly uncomfortable. "Look, we're not evicting you or anything. But until property records are confirmed, we'd like to keep things peaceful." I looked at Amber. She was seething, her hands clenched into fists. But she gave a small nod. I had to think smart, not loud. I took one last look at Karen, standing triumphantly in her dripping one-piece, and turned back toward the house. "You haven't won anything," I muttered, loud enough for her to hear. She only grinned. "See you tomorrow, neighbor. We're hosting a sunset yoga session by the water." I didn't respond. I walked back inside, my mind already racing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, because I was furious. Furious that someone could waltz into my backyard, declare it hers, and then wave around what amounted to glorified toilet paper. And the system, my system, would blink and tell me to be patient. I'd spent my career unraveling scams like this. But never once did I think I'd be the damn victim of one. By dawn, I was already up, seated at the kitchen table, flipping through my original property documents. I had the full title packet, dated, signed, sealed, certified by the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. No easements, no subdivision, no right-of-way carve-outs. My land extended straight through to the pool and beyond, where I'd personally installed a cedar fence just 2 years ago. Amber brought me a mug of coffee. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. By 8 sharp, I was parked outside the county recorder's office, sitting in a dusty leather chair across from my old acquaintance, Jenny Holbrook. Jenny had been in this office for over 20 years. She'd helped me file the parcel when we closed on the house 6 years ago. She remembered the case. "Okay," she said, squinting at her screen. "Let's pull up parcels 09422A. My gut clenched at the hesitation in her voice. "What do you mean, I asked. She clicked, frowned, clicked again. "It says here that as of last month, the parcel was split. Section B. Looks like it covers roughly 25 feet beyond your back patio, including the pool, is now filed under a secondary holding. Owner listed as Stockton Karen R." I leaned forward. "That's impossible. That pool is well within my original parcel. I designed it." Jenny looked genuinely disturbed. "I don't know how this happened. It looks like someone resurrected an archived subdivision map. This is from '02, long before your purchase. It was part of a development project that never went anywhere. But somehow that map got activated, and the county system now treats it like the current boundary." "Who made the change?" I asked. She hesitated, then clicked through audit logs. "The update was manually approved, not by me." She turned the screen slightly. "Here, D. Cayley, supervisor credentials." I exhaled slowly through my nose. Douglas Cayley, that smug pre-retirement donut-stuffing desk vampire. I'd heard his name before. He'd been whispered about in a few land disputes involving clerical corrections that always seemed to benefit the HOA elite. "Can you print the log history and the changes for me?" "I'm not technically supposed to," she began, then saw my face. "I'll do it off the books. You never got it from me." I left the office with a growing stack of printed files and a feeling I hadn't felt in years, not since the day I testified in court against a developer who'd tried to bulldoze a protected cemetery for a parking lot. That feeling was war. Back home, Amber had already cleared a spot on the dining table and laid out everything we had: our deed, mortgage finalization, property tax bills, pool contractor receipts, even the irrigation permit. I laid the new files beside them. "She actually filed an amended parcel map," I said, "through the county, using a 20-year-old draft that was never finalized." Amber stared at me. "So she committed fraud." "Not directly," I muttered. "Not yet. Technically, the map exists. The change was entered into the system by a county employee. To undo it, I need to prove deliberate abuse. But that's not all." I pulled out the most disturbing page, an application for boundary reassignment, signed electronically by me. Or rather, by someone claiming to be me. Amber's face turned pale. "She forged your signature. Worse, she used an e-signature template with a digital stamp. The county doesn't verify identity for internal amendments if they come from an authorized employee." My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from sheer controlled rage. "I'm going to need a full forensic audit and legal backup." Just then, our eldest, Cameron, stepped into the room. "Dad, she's back." I looked up. Cameron was pointing toward the patio. I rushed to the window. Karen was once again in our backyard. This time she wasn't swimming. She was giving a damn tour. 3 new women in sundresses and straw hats were following her around as she gestured toward the pool, the deck, even the grill. Amber's jaw dropped. She's hosting another open house. I grabbed my phone, hit the security app, and cursed when I remembered the camera system had been offline until yesterday. But thank God I'd rebooted it. Every minute was recording now. I zoomed in on the footage. Karen, yes, it's been a little tricky, but the county finally acknowledged the boundary shift. It's officially mine now. This section, we call it the Summer Villa. I rent it out for short stays, mostly weekends. $2,000 flat rate. Fully private. One of the women asked something I couldn't hear. Karen laughed. No, don't worry about the man who was here. He's the previous owner. Has trouble letting go. He thinks he still owns it, poor guy. Amber looked at me. Tell me we're suing. Better, I said. We're going to bury her. The camera footage was gold. Every smug gesture, every lie Karen poured into those women's ears, every step she took onto my property, all of it captured in high definition with clear audio and time-stamped metadata. I uploaded the clips to a secure drive and immediately started assembling a case file. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. This was full-on real estate fraud, dressed up in yoga pants and Cabernet Sauvignon. I called Ron Tuesday, my go-to attorney for land disputes and the only man I trusted to keep his mouth shut while lighting legal fires under bureaucrats. We'd worked together on a nasty adverse possession case a few years back, and I knew he was the kind of guy who sharpened his teeth on forged deeds. He picked up on the second ring. Ron, it's Jared Weston. He let out a groan. What the hell did you buy this time? Nothing, but someone thinks they bought a piece of my backyard. I gave him the fast version. Karen, the fake boundary, the villa tours, the forged map, the e-signed reassignment filed by some greased-up clerk. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Okay, he said, that's insane and deeply illegal. You have proof? Oh, I've got more than proof. I've got HD footage of her offering short-term rentals of my pool deck. She's calling it a summer villa. She's quoting rates. He whistled low. That'll do it. Okay. You free in 2 hours? 2 hours later, we were sitting in Ron's downtown office, surrounded by manila folders, highlighters, and a bottle of bourbon he kept in the bottom drawer for what he called weaponized real estate cases. He watched the footage twice without speaking, rewinding certain parts, scribbling notes. Then he looked at me. Do you know how long she's been doing this? Not exactly, but from what I saw today, she's not shy about repeating the lie. She's running a scam out in the open. We'll need to file an injunction immediately, Ron said. Get the court to freeze the reassignment and issue a temporary restraining order. Then we go for the big stuff. And the county clerk? I asked. That's the bigger issue. We can't accuse a public employee of collusion without hard evidence, but if we can connect the clerk to the signature upload or any HOA-related transfers, we've got a pattern, especially if she's done this before. That gave me an idea. I want to go digging, I said. There's a handful of other properties around here that I know had weird handovers. I want to know if Karen was involved. Ron grinned. I knew you couldn't sit still. Fine. You dig. I draft. But I want it clean. Paper trails. No confrontations. No shouting at HOA meetings. No promises. Back home, Amber was already halfway through building a dossier of her own. She'd printed out Facebook posts from the neighborhood group, old ones, some dating back months. And there, buried in the April archives, was gold. A photo Karen had posted herself, her standing in front of what was clearly my fence, captioned, "Excited to reclaim what should have never left the community." Reclaim? Another thread led to a short post from a woman named Darlene Cook, dated last summer. Can anyone explain why the HOA suddenly says I owe $800 for pool access when my lease says it's private? This was not in the contract. Amber looked up. Do you think she's done this before? Not think, I said. No. She's been inching her way into other properties, grabbing land by manipulating the registry, then retrofitting a narrative around it. That night, I set up 3 new security cameras around the backyard, one on the fence line, one pointed directly at the pool, and one under the eave above the patio. Motion activated, cloud synced, encrypted. The tech was overkill for keeping out raccoons, but perfect for catching a HOA sociopath in the act. And sure enough, Sunday morning brought more footage. This time, Karen arrived early just after sunrise, with a clipboard in hand and a man trailing behind her. He looked like a contractor measuring wheel laser-level backpack. They spent 20 minutes walking around the pool and deck, marking the ground with flag tape, like they were preparing for a landscaping remodel. She even posed for a photo, holding a cup of coffee and pointing at the pool like she'd just bought beachfront property. But the kicker came when the contractor asked her a question and Karen responded, clearly, audibly, "No, the owners moved out last year. This whole parcel sat vacant until I acquired it through reassignment. The paperwork's done. We'll be renting it through my management company for now, but the HOA is looking into full acquisition." I rewound and replayed that line at least 10 times. The owners moved out last year. I walked into my kitchen, poured a drink at 10 in the morning, and muttered to myself, "Lady, you just walked into your own damn perjury hearing." By Sunday night, I had everything stitched together. The footage of her tours, the contract discussion with a builder, her false claims, the digital forgery, the Facebook statements, and one more cherry on top, an email forwarded anonymously from an old contact of mine at the county. It was a draft invoice from an HOA shell company, Crescent Holdings, LLC, billing 2 renters for pool facility usage with my address listed. Dated 2 weeks ago. Amount, $3,000. The bank account was a shadow account tied to an offshore firm out of Nevada. I'd seen this game before. Karen wasn't just lying. She was laundering fake real estate. By the time I met with Ron again Monday morning, I had a full folder labeled Operation Fraudulent Mermaid. Ron looked it over, shaking his head. "You realize we're not just filing an injunction anymore," he said. "We're going criminal, fraud, trespassing, filing false documents. Possibly conspiracy if we can tie this to more parcels." I nodded. He reached for his bourbon, then paused. "You ready for this?" I smiled. I was born ready. And this time, I've got more than evidence. I've got motive, money, and momentum. By Tuesday morning, I was no longer just a man trying to reclaim his backyard. I was the unofficial lead investigator on what was rapidly shaping up to be a multi-property fraud ring. I had video, documents, and now financial records. All roads pointed to one woman, but something told me Karen wasn't smart enough to have orchestrated this alone. So I did what any sane person with a vendetta and a scanner would do. I pulled parcel histories on every property adjacent to mine and cross-referenced them with HOA activity records, building permits, and anything Karen's name had touched over the past 2 years. And there it was, a pattern. 3 parcels, including mine, had been adjusted in the system within the past 16 months. Each time, an archived subdivision map was quietly reactivated, the ownership section of the database was altered via internal override, and then within weeks, Crescent Holdings LLC filed activity under the same addresses. And guess who signed off on all 3? D. Cayley, Maricopa County's own desk gremlin, registrar, public employee, and, as I was now sure, Karen's golden key to the kingdom. I called Ron. "This guy's not sloppy," I said, "but he's arrogant. He leaves just enough of a paper trail to pretend it's a clerical update, but not enough to survive a real audit, unless someone connects the dots." Ron exhaled into the phone. "Then let's help someone connect them. You ready to go public?" "Absolutely." We reached out to a local journalist, Melissa Crane, who had covered property fraud scandals before and wasn't afraid to name names. I handed her the full package. She lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "I knew there was something off about Oak Point HOA," she said. "A few complaints came in over the years, but this is systemic." I asked her to wait just one more day before publishing, because I wanted to see the reaction on Karen's face when she found out the gig was up, not from whispers, but from cold, hard process servers. Meanwhile, Ron filed 2 motions that morning. An emergency injunction to freeze any HOA-related control over my parcel, and a formal complaint to the county auditor's office against Cayley for administrative misconduct. That last one hit like a brick, because within 3 hours, Cayley's office issued a bland no comment, followed by a sudden notice that he was on leave. That same afternoon, a private investigator Ron liked to work with, Retta Daly, ex-cop, zero tolerance for bullshit, sent me a message. "Check your email. Subject, Queen Karen and her castle of lies. You're gonna love this." I opened the folder. Photos. A whole sequence shot from a long lens. Karen sitting at a patio bar across from Kaylee, the very man who supposedly had nothing to do with the property mess. 2 martinis on the table, a manila folder between them. Timestamp. 3 weeks before my pool incident, Retta had also traced Crescent Holdings LLC to a registered agent service used by a number of HOA shell corps, the mailing address, a P.O. box in Chandler, the phone number, a disconnected burner line. The listed manager, a fake name. But it got better. Karen had been using her HOA title to negotiate amicable takeovers of small corner lots and utility easements. She'd offer small payouts or threaten compliance citations. Then, when owners didn't fold, she'd magically acquire a segment through what now looked like a corrupt back channel in the registry. At this point, we didn't just have motive. We had process, precedent, and now collusion. I knew the timing was perfect, so I armed the house for what came next. I adjusted camera angles, saved every clip in multiple encrypted clouds, and installed a motion-triggered floodlight right over the pool. If Karen or anyone else came back, they'd be greeted with 1,000 lumens and a digital spotlight for the cops. Then, late that night, I got the final nail in the coffin. A voicemail. Not a call from Karen. Oh no, she was way too smug for that. It was from a man. Nervous voice. Said his name was Thomas Dunn, former member of the HOA board. Said he'd seen too much, kept quiet too long, and now, with things coming out, he didn't want to go down with her. I've got minutes from meetings she never logged, he said. Email threads. She used her position to coerce, silence, and rewrite property maps. It goes deeper than you know. He was willing to talk. Ron and I agreed to meet him in person the next morning, but before we could even get to that, a different storm hit. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Motion alert. I pulled up the feed, and there she was, Karen walking into my backyard again, flashlight in hand, checking the corner by the pool. Alone this time. No music, no wine, no smirk, just lurking. I hit record, called the police. Hello, yes, I've got a trespasser, again. Same woman, same spot. I have video. The dispatcher knew my name this time. Officers en route, stay inside. I stood at the window, watching her through the blinds. She paced, looked over her shoulder, pulled something from her pocket, looked like a measuring tape, and knelt down at the fence line. Then the light snapped on. The motion-triggered floods hit her like a spotlight on a Broadway stage. Karen jumped, cursed, and bolted, straight into the arms of a deputy who'd just entered through the side gate. He cuffed her on the spot, and I swear to God, I heard her scream, "This is my property. That light is illegal. I'll sue you." Yeah, lady. Good luck with that. By the time the deputy had Karen in the back seat of his cruiser, my adrenaline had shifted from fury to something colder. Strategy. I wasn't just trying to get her off my lawn anymore. I wanted her entire castle of fraud reduced to splinters, and every accomplice dragged into the sunlight like cockroaches under a flood lamp. Karen didn't go quietly. Even cuffed, she kept shouting through the open patrol car window as if sheer volume could alter reality. "This is harassment. You have no jurisdiction here. I'm the president of the HOA. This is HOA land." The officer closed the door on her mid-rant, turned to me, and said with the dry weariness of a man who'd seen far too much of humanity at 3 a.m, "We'll be forwarding the trespass charge to the county attorney. Given the footage you provided, I doubt they'll dismiss it." I nodded, then handed over the USB stick with the security footage, properly time-stamped and watermarked. "That's just the tip of the iceberg," I said. "You might want to send someone to check on a registrar named Douglas Cayley. Things are about to get very uncomfortable for him." As the patrol car pulled away, I stood at the edge of my patio, watching the red and blue lights disappear down the road, and felt, for the first time in days, calm. Not peace, not closure, but focus. The kind you get when you know the predator's been caught in the trap, and now it's time to skin the entire operation. That morning, I met Ron at the courthouse steps. He was grinning, holding 2 thick folders. The judge granted our emergency injunction and issued a court order freezing any HOA administrative actions involving your parcel. Effective immediately, they can't touch a blade of grass without risking contempt. "Beautiful," I said. "What about the fraud complaint?" "It's moving fast. The county auditor's office opened a formal inquiry into Cayley. And get this, he didn't show up to work today. No call, no email, just vanished. I'm guessing he heard about the arrest and decided to take an early retirement." We walked into the courtroom just as the clerk opened the doors. The hearing wasn't a full trial yet, but it was a critical juncture, a motion to permanently enjoin Karen and the HOA from asserting any further authority over my land, pool, or even the damn grass clippings that blew across the fence. Karen wasn't in court. Her attorney was. A stiff, sour-looking man who looked like he'd been assigned the case in Hell's waiting room. Ron stood, presented our file to the judge. He delivered it clean and precise. Video evidence of trespassing, property forgery, the illegally altered registry entry, financial records from Crescent Holdings LLC, the contractor footage, and, for a little flair, a blown-up photo of Karen giving. A pool tour while sipping a mimosa like a dollar store real estate mogul. The judge barely blinked. Counselor, are you stating that the defendant entered the plaintiff's private property after a court had already been petitioned for relief? Yes, Your Honor, Ron said. And the trespass occurred less than 24 hours ago. She was arrested on site. My client's cameras recorded the event. Karen's lawyer stood and attempted to stammer through a defense. He argued there had been confusion over the boundaries, that Karen acted in good faith based on county records, and that she was merely protecting the interests of the homeowners association. That's when Ron dropped the nuke. Your Honor, he said, holding up the affidavit. This is a sworn statement from Thomas Dunn, former HOA board member, submitted this morning. He attests that the HOA board never approved or authorized any boundary adjustments involving Mr. Weston's property, nor did they vote on any acquisition. In fact, he states under oath that Mrs. Stockton acted entirely on her own, and that when he raised concerns, she threatened him with removal and fabricated meeting minutes to hide her actions. The judge nodded slowly. Then he turned to Karen's lawyer. Do you intend to challenge the validity of this affidavit? The man hesitated. At this time, Your Honor, no. Then this court finds sufficient evidence to sustain the injunction and grants the motion to prohibit any further interference from the HOA or Mrs. Stockton in Mr. Weston's property. Furthermore, the court orders all documentation involving parcel 094222A to be sequestered pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Boom. I turned to Ron. He gave me a nod that said what he didn't say aloud. We're winning. After the hearing, as we walked out into the sunlight, Melissa Crane, the reporter, was waiting at the courthouse steps with a camera crew. She'd seen the footage, read the filings, and was now ready to broadcast the story under the headline, Pool Piracy and Property Fraud, the HOA President Under Fire. We gave her a brief, on-the-record statement. I made sure to use the word forgery and trespassing several times, just to let it settle in the public ear. Ron threw in abuse of office and systemic misconduct. Within 3 hours, it was all over local news. Karen's face, mid-rant, being loaded into the patrol car, was now the front-page banner on 3 local outlets and 1 national blog that specialized in HOA horror stories. That evening, I got a call from a man who introduced himself as a federal investigator from the Arizona District Attorney's Office. He asked if I'd be willing to testify in a possible racketeering investigation involving HOA board abuse and fraudulent land conversions. I said, "Tell me when and where." Amber and I watched the news that night while our kids played video games, oblivious to the fact that their dad had just helped bring down a criminal empire built on pool chairs and fake deeds. On screen, Karen's mugshot appeared. Below it, the headline, HOA President Accused of Forging Ownership, Rents Private Pool to Strangers. Amber raised her glass to me. So, what are we calling this operation? I thought for a second, smiled, and said, eviction. If I had any doubts about how far Karen was willing to go, they vanished the moment I saw her again, in full view of my security cameras, just 2 days after the hearing, strolling into my backyard as if nothing had happened. Only this time, she wasn't alone. She brought a full entourage, 6 guests, folding chairs, a Bluetooth speaker, towels, even a white catering tent, which 2 men began setting up near my pool while Karen stood nearby, clipboard in hand, directing them like a tyrant empress re-establishing her domain. She was wearing a new sun hat, the kind you buy when you think you'll never see consequences again. I watched the live camera feed on my phone in disbelief. Sitting in Ron's office, he stared at the screen, completely still. "She's violating a court order," I said quietly. Ron blinked once. "Oh, we're past civil contempt now. This is criminal stupidity." He immediately called the judge's clerk, then the county sheriff's liaison. We had our injunction copy ready. We had yesterday's footage of her ranting from behind the squad car. We had it all. But nothing, absolutely nothing, would beat what happened next. I got in my truck and drove home. Not to confront her. I wasn't that stupid, but because I wanted to see her face when the sheriff showed up. Amber had already pulled the kids inside and locked the patio doors. She was watching through the blinds like she was live streaming an episode of Karen's Final Meltdown. I parked across the street, stayed on the sidewalk. Karen spotted me. Her face lit up like I was a hotel concierge who'd forgotten her champagne order. "You again," she said, voice high and falsely sweet. "Are you still confused about who owns this property? I suggest you check the plat records again." "Oh, wait, never mind. I had the county revise them." Her friends giggled behind her. One woman was already in the pool. Another was filming on her phone like this was a music video. And then came the flashing lights. 2 sheriff's SUVs pulled up. Doors opened. Deputies stepped out. Karen's smile faltered. One of the deputies walked right up to her. "Ma'am, we've got a signed injunction from Judge Holland stating that you are not to enter this property under any circumstances." Karen puffed herself up like a hen in a thunderstorm. "This isn't Mr. Weston's property. The reassignment is still pending review, and I have rental guests who paid for—" "Ma'am," the deputy cut her off. "You're being placed under arrest for criminal trespassing, violation of a court order, and unlawful occupation." She blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" The deputy didn't answer. He just turned her around and began cuffing her. Karen began shrieking. "You're making a mistake. This is harassment. This is political. I am a community leader." Another deputy turned to the guests. "You folks are all going to need to leave. This is private property. Anyone remaining will be subject to the same charges." The woman in the pool squealed and scrambled out, slipping on the wet concrete and nearly crashing into the catering table. Someone knocked over a wine bottle. One of the men tried to argue that they were just following instructions, but the deputies weren't in the mood. Within minutes, the entire party had cleared like someone yelled fire in a nail salon. Karen, still in cuffs, screamed at me across the lawn. "You can't do this. I'll sue you for entrapment, for harassment. This is my pool." I just folded my arms and waited. Then something incredible happened. One of the deputies walked back to her car, pulled a small evidence bag from the trunk, and opened it in front of her. Inside, a rental agreement, printed, laminated, listing my address as a private retreat under HOA management, signed by Karen and dated 2 weeks prior. "Ma'am," the deputy said, "you charged people money to rent a property you don't own." "That's fraud." She went silent. For the first time since this circus began, Karen had no words. They loaded her into the back of the SUV, and this time, she didn't scream. She just sat there, frozen like someone finally realized they weren't the protagonist of the story. I walked back into my house, dead silent. Amber was sitting at the kitchen island, clutching her phone. On the screen, local news was already reporting on the arrest, with a headline so glorious I had to read it twice. HOA president arrested at pool party, claimed property that wasn't hers. The footage was from a neighbor's Ring camera across the street. It showed the police rolling up, the cuffs, the wine bottles, the tent, the whole suburban fiasco in glorious wide angle. And, better yet, the report aired again that night on national cable. Karen had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. The next day, I received a formal subpoena from the state attorney's office. They were opening a criminal fraud case. Karen's charges now included trespassing, contempt of court, false claims, fraudulent real estate practices, misuse of HOA authority, unlawful rental operations, and wire fraud. And she wasn't the only one in trouble. The county registrar, Kaylee, had vanished. But news broke that the feds were looking for him, and a sealed indictment had already been issued. Retta RPI told us he had likely skipped the state. More victims of Karen's HOA takeovers were coming forward. People who'd been bullied, fined, or misled into giving up portions of their lots. The district attorney called me personally. "You might have just helped us crack the biggest HOA corruption scheme in Arizona history." I nodded and said, "Glad I could help." But deep down, I was already thinking ahead, because we weren't done yet. We still had court. We still had Crescent Holdings. And I wanted to make damn sure no Karen ever tried this again. The trial hadn't even begun, and Karen Stockton had already gone through 2 lawyers. By Monday morning, she showed up in court with a third, a weary man in a beige suit, who looked like he'd spent the weekend Googling how to defend a fraud queen. Karen looked different now. Gone was the flashy poolside queen. She wore a somber gray blazer, flat hair, no jewelry. But the eyes, those stayed the same, cold, calculating, still convinced she could outmaneuver reality by sheer entitlement. Ron and I sat in the front row, surrounded by reporters, angry residents, and a few former HOA board members who, if I read their body language right, were praying they weren't next. The prosecution opened with clarity and fire. They laid out the charges, 12 counts, including criminal trespassing, document forgery, wire fraud, false police reports, and conspiracy to defraud the public. They showed footage, bank transfers, her fake rental agreements, and a beautifully edited highlight reel of Karen literally standing in my pool offering weekend rates to strangers. Karen's lawyer tried the classic route, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she acted in good faith, that the county records were confusing, and that she had simply tried to enforce community standards. That's when the prosecution called Thomas Dunn, former HOA board member, one of Karen's old lieutenants. Now turned whistleblower, he walked to the stand and placed a folder beside him. Inside, screenshots, emails, and unedited board minutes Karen had tried to suppress. He testified under oath that Karen had manipulated parcel maps, ordered backdoor changes to property lines, and strong-armed other board members into silence with threats of fines and re-election consequences. When asked why he came forward, Thomas didn't hesitate. "Because I finally realized we weren't enforcing rules," he said. "We were stealing land, and I wasn't going to jail for a woman who thought she was untouchable." The courtroom went still. Next came the forensic surveyor, then the digital records expert, then the woman who had paid $2,000 to rent my pool for a birthday party and had no idea it wasn't actually Karen's. And finally, I took the stand. I recounted everything, returning home to find strangers in my yard, the forged documents, the bogus boundary changes, the midnight trespassing, and the outright lies. I showed the judge the footage of Karen calling herself the rightful owner, bragging about reclaiming community property, and laughing at the idea of anyone stopping her. When I was done, the judge stared silently for several seconds. Then he asked Karen's lawyer, "Do you intend to challenge the authenticity of this evidence?" The lawyer looked down. "No, Your Honor." The judge ruled immediately. The case would proceed to full trial under criminal prosecution, and a recommendation was made to dissolve the Oak Point HOA's authority pending full state audit. 2 days later, the state auditor's office published a report detailing 7 other properties affected by similar fraudulent boundary edits, most of them in Karen's own HOA district. A court order followed. Oak Point HOA was to be suspended, with its bank accounts frozen, all board members removed, and a temporary administrator appointed by the state. The office that once housed the Board of Community Standards now sat empty, padlocked, with a sign taped to the door. Closed by order of Maricopa County. Under investigation. I couldn't take 3 steps outside my home without someone thanking me. Neighbors brought over letters, fine notices, threats, and HOA citations from the past 2 years, dozens of them. I reviewed each one with Ron, and we realized something important. This wasn't just my fight anymore. We assembled a civil lawsuit, a class action suit on behalf of 13 residents. Claims included fraud, emotional distress, property damage, extortion through fines, abuse of governance. And just when we thought the wave was over, we received one last piece of news. Karen was to be formally indicted on 12 criminal counts, including felony fraud, impersonation of a property owner, falsifying public records, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Oh, and Kaylee, the coward registrar who had altered the maps. He'd been caught fleeing to Mexico with over $70,000 in cash and a hard drive labeled Archive Private. He was now in federal custody. That night, I sat on my porch with Amber. It was quiet finally. No music, no strangers, no headlights pulling up to rent my pool. "Think it's over?" she asked, sipping her wine. "Not yet," I said, "but we're almost there." The trial lasted 9 days. Karen Stockton, once the self-declared queen of HOA compliance, now sat in a courtroom stripped of title, power, and dignity. Her face, always so quick to twist into a smug smirk, was blank, unreadable. Her third attorney tried one last desperate swing, arguing for reduced charges based on administrative misinterpretation and community confusion. But the jury wasn't buying it. They didn't need flowery arguments. They had footage, testimonies, bank records, signed fraudulent agreements, testimony from renters, victims, and former board members. And above all, they had intent, crystal clear, and caught on tape. In her own words, Karen was convicted on all 12 counts. The judge didn't waste time. Mrs. Stockton used her position not to serve a community, but to deceive and enrich herself through calculated fraud. She forged, threatened, and lied, all while hiding behind the illusion of legitimacy. The court finds this to be a severe breach of public trust. 15 years, no parole, full asset forfeiture. When she heard the sentence, Karen didn't scream. She didn't faint. She just sat. Like the reality was finally too heavy to carry, and for the first time, she couldn't talk her way out from under it. Her co-conspirator, Douglas Cayley, pleaded guilty in a separate hearing. He took a 5-year deal in exchange for turning over every detail of their scheme: emails, financial transfers, even a list of target parcels they'd planned to go after next. HOA properties, single owners with poor legal support, elderly residents. It was calculated, surgical, and now utterly exposed. With Oak Point HOA dissolved by court order, the state sent in a forensic audit team. What they uncovered was even worse than expected: over $250,000 in redirected funds, illegal compliance fines, and forged contractor invoices that led right back to shell companies tied to Karen. Residents were furious. But now they had a path. Ron filed the civil suit on behalf of 13 households, including mine. We won a collective judgment of $380,000 in damages and fees, every dime of which came from what remained of Karen's frozen assets and Crescent Holdings' accounts, which had been seized by the state. The HOA office was bulldozed by court order. In its place, the community voted to build a public green space. No gates, no compliance officers, no more clipboards. As for me, I finally reclaimed the last thing Karen had taken: peace. One sunny Saturday, I stood by the pool, the same one she used to invade with towels, wine, and fake ownership papers, and I installed something I'd had custom made. A cast iron sign, bold and unmistakable: "Welcome to Weston Waters' private property. No trespassing, no HO, no Karens." Amber laughed when she saw it. Subtle. "That's the point," I said. "We threw a real party that day. Neighbors came over, people who'd been afraid to so much as hang wind chimes without HOA approval. There was barbecue, music, and kids cannonballing into the pool like it had never been anything but ours. And it hadn't. Not really. Not even during the worst of it. Because the truth is, you can lie, steal, file fake paperwork, call the cops, but when a person owns their land, their name, their fight, you can't take that. You just end up in handcuffs, screaming about property lines you never had a right to cross. So now I sleep easy. The cameras still run. The gate stays locked. And if anyone ever thinks about trying something like that again, they'll see the sign, and they'll know.